All right, today I would like to talk to you guys about getting prints ready. When you're doing printmaking, there's a transfer process for your image that has to occur. There are a couple of different types of blocks that we could be using. Obviously, we could be using woodcut. This is a linoleum block that's back to an MDF board, and this is particularly hard stuff. It's harder to cut, but you can get finer detail in it, so it's pretty good that way. What I'm going to be using today, and what most of you will be using, is this flexible easy cut linoleum. It's a little better product for the most part, other than you have to be very, very careful how you cut it in order to get really thin lines. But before you can even start cutting, you have to make your image selection. And so there's a lot of different options out there for how you make your prints. It could be pattern heavy, it could be positive and negative space design or logo design. You could have vector form or highlights in shadow artwork, like you might see on a rock poster or something of that nature, where it's like really gritty and intense. So the highlight parts are just bright white and the shadows are just pitch black. Printmaking does really well for that. But you can also feather it with shading if you're careful with creating little tiny lines. You can get some wood block cut feel to it where it actually has some shading and some round to it. Today I'm focusing on kind of the irony prints or the send a message prints that some of you have seen, and I have chosen this little figure right here I found that was riding a motorcycle I thought was pretty cool from the World War II era, and I'm gonna go ahead and transfer that now. And transfer is pretty easy. This soft cut stuff comes really powdery, like it has this certain powder to it that you can see the white of my thumb there, that you have to get off. So the first rule about this is making sure that you take it and wash it with some hot soapy water and scrub it down to get all that gunk off. And then once it's off, it's really, really tacky. It'll attract dirt and grime and fingerprints and all kinds of stuff. That's why it's got that talcum powder on it, is to protect it from just getting everything on the surface and embedded into it. So I have drawn out this guy on a piece of you can use tracing paper. If you don't have tracing paper available, you can use just plain old computer print paper, or even lined notebook paper will work. But once it's washed off, I'm going to flip it upside down, and the image is going to reverse, and I'm going to make a rubbing of it. Okay, and it's going to go pretty easy, but I want to make sure to get everything. Once I've chosen the position, which I can kind of see through, and double check, is that really the position that I want this to be in? I'd make any adjustments that you need to make. And then you're going to use the flat side of a pencil, or on a drawing pencil you have no eraser on the end, you can use that little cap. But I'm going to go over it a couple of times here, and then I'm just going to carefully, making sure not to move the paper at all. I'm going to go through and I'm just going to give it a kind of a medium pressure. And I'm going to walk through, and I'm going to just sort of make sure that all of these little lines transfer. Okay? And if I push too hard, if I just go super hard on it, it'll actually start to blur the image, and that's not obviously what we want. It's really tacky once it's been washed with hot soap and water. It'll just peel right off. So before, I'm going to check it without letting go of my position. So I'm just going to back my fingers up on that a little bit, pull it back. Does it look good? Looks good. So I can pull this all the way off. There I go. Notice I've done my lettering on a separate piece. The lettering, I played around with it a little bit. I decided to do this kind of game over deal right there, and it's going to reverse. When I put this on, I'm going to have backwards lettering, and I'm going to cut it out backwards as well. So this is just what I've chosen to go with my image. And, you might need to look up different fonts. You don't want to just use stick lettering. That's not going to work out very well with printmaking. Your lettering, you've worked a while on it, you need to have some body or some space instead of just a thin line. You need to be able to create something better than just basic bubble block or stick letter. Choose a font that's going to go with your image. Okay, so there I go. I have my game over. I've got this. Next part is the speedball cutter. The speedball cutting tool is everything in printmaking. We're going to keep the blades in a separate container, not in the back. So this is my container back there. It has them numbered 1 all the way through 6. These are different types of blades. Please keep them separated in those different bins. The temptation, of course, is to shove them all in the back end, which is fine as long as you're working with it. But when you go to put them away, make sure you put them in the right spot. So on all of these speedball cutting tools, they have a chuck on them. And the chuck has these little bits in them that kind of form together to hold the blade in. And so I'll show you. The back end of the blade is the non-sharp end. Believe it or not, I have to say that. People often will shove, especially on the bigger cutting tools, they'll shove the sharp end in. Don't do that. The back end is the soft round end, and it's going to go in between these two layers like this and sandwich. Now I'm taking it out of the chuck just to show you, but every time you lose a piece of these, you really have to buy a whole new set. You know, they don't just sell the little bits, or at least not that I've been able to find. So make sure that you don't lose these on the floor. I'm going to put the bullet end kind of down on it. If you look at, it's got that rounded end there and the flat end in the back. I'm going to just screw it on a little bit so it's still loose. And then I'm going to go ahead and put a thick blade in there just so you can start to see what this will look like when I'm carving in the round. In fact, I'm going to use a squared one. Okay. And I tighten it up. Don't over tighten it. And when I hold it, I'm going to put the back end, the round end, in the palm of my hand. And I'm going to wrap these 3 fingers around the edge, put the thumb on the outside edge to control, and the top finger is going to go down right here, just like that. And I'm going to use that to cut. And I'm always going to cut away from myself. I'm going to turn this thing, and I'm going to continue to cut like that. I'm also going to leave myself a little bit of a border. I like to, on the softer cuts like this, I like to leave a little bit of a border so that it prints smoothly. If you don't do that, what can happen is the edge work, all this detail work that's happening in here, can become so floppy that it messes with your print when you're going to put ink on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to carve away everything that I don't want. So keep in mind your background is a pattern in itself. I've decided that I'm going to work kind of vertically like this, so all my cutout lines are going to be going vertical. Some people choose to do like halo effects, just running vertical or lines that go around their subject. That's fine to do as well. Remember that some of this will be picked up, and so it can become a part of your print. So I'm going to turn this, run it this way as well. You can see that I don't want to go too deep. I want to keep the edge of the blade still above the surface. If I go too deep, it can gouge and you can get all kinds of rips and tears. You just don't need to go very deep. When you roll this over with ink, it'll take anything that's not cut and it'll put ink on it. Anything that is cut, even if it's just a little bit down, will be passed over. Okay? So I'm going to continue to cut away at this, and you can see it when I'm all finished. And part 2 on this is going to be what do you do with it now that it's cut. And I'm going to actually cut away all the white areas inside the figure itself. And I think a lot of people get a little confused with this when they're doing their drawings. They slap their drawings down, they have a lot of lines. Notice that while my image is complex, I've went through it and I've tried to darken the shadows for any areas that have a shape and a shadow to them, that's, you know, part of a shadow or a highlight. And I make sure that that's there so that I can cut away just the white parts. All right, thanks.